We're ready to get started. Wow. Okay. Alright, Excel, we don't need you this evening, so we can make you go away. Both. Fantastic. Okay. Alright, I swear, every time I update OBS, I'm super paranoid. We just check all of the things. This is one at that time, you don't check, and it just like, right in the face. So, that's out of the way now. Hey, excuse me. So today we're gonna play a little bit with Publisher. Publisher is an interesting program provided by Microsoft because it allows you to make all sorts of different types of publications. Specifically this evening, I wanted to use it to make some social cards. So, say you're going to a convention, right? And you brought yourself some stickers and maybe some other things you plan on handing out, or just planning to hang out with your buddies, or hey, you want to make some new ones. Like a business card, social cards have your info on them, like your Twitch account or your Twitter information. So it's easy enough to just hand a little piece of paper to your new friend if you so happen to want to share information, and it's a quick, clean way for everybody to find each other. Push comes to shove, it helps. So then you don't misplace information, because write down your name on a napkin, where's that end up? In the garbage. But so with Publisher, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can make advertisements, certifications, banners, brochures, gift certificates, flyers. Yes, I am reading from the built-in pre-created categories because, well, they're here. You can do lots of stuff. And we're gonna do the business card thing. So when you make business cards, generally what do you use? You use thicker paper, right? You normally use general printer paper. You can use general printer paper, but it doesn't have that nice robustness that you would expect from a business card, right? So what we're gonna do is we are going to work with some normal cardstock, which nothing special, right? There's gonna be two pieces. We're gonna make the business card, or excuse me, the social card, and then we're gonna print it and talk a little bit about using different types of media. Ergo, normal cardstock, and they actually make business cardstock, which I managed to get my hands on some of that for this evening, which I didn't know existed. Probably should have known, but yeah, what are you gonna do? All right, I've bored you enough. Let's get started. Let's see here. So we are going to cook out. All right. So normally, when you start something with me, I usually take us right into it. But we are going to look a little bit at the normal screen when you open Publisher, right? So this is Publisher 2013, and amongst here, this is the normal menu it drops you into, right? So it gives you lots of stuff to kind of springboard yourself off of. If we take a look, there's like super useless, what's your paper size thing here? Well, there's lots of stuff that you can work off of that's pre-built, that's in Publisher. Templates, right? And then you can customize it as you have. You're not interested in a template? Well then, get your paper size correct, and then go from there, right? So we're going to swing over to the built-in section. And these are all the different templates that you can choose from. Now granted, each of these general templates then has a bunch of examples underneath them. Because like if I click on award certificates, it's not going to just be one example. There's going to be a bunch of them, right? And if I do a little scroll here, you can see there's lots of stuff you can do with this. If you need to make a professional resume, you got that rocking out. You want to make a menu for your business, or if you've got like a food stand, now you want to make something a little bit creative. The cool thing about making this stuff yourself is that, one, you can make it how you want it, and two, you don't have to do too much crazy work to get what you want. There's a couple of little hiccups that happen with this program, like the way layers lay, but I'll get to that. Yes, so let's scoot back up here. We're going to go to business cards. Alrighty. So now we're in here, and these are the install templates up here, and then more templates that are here down bottom. So I could scroll through these, and you can see if you don't want to go with a pre-created one, down here are the blank templates that you'd want to work off of. So even though you're likely printing on a normal 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or cardstock, this is the size of the actual business card when it's all said and done. Whether you're working with normal paper and plan on cutting it yourself, or if you're working with something that's pre-perforated. You want to make sure that your the size of the business card you're going to plan on working with matches with what you're going to end up chopping up in the end, right? So in the case of my situation, I have North American paper, North American cardstock, pre-perforated stock. So we'll be going with the North American size, right? But if you're in other parts of the world, or if you just simply want a different style of business card, like say you want the East Asian size, it's right there. You could just click on it and you can rock and roll, right? So this evening, I'm going to pick on one of these templates. And I'm going to show you how we can remove some stuff and add some stuff. Yeah, alright. I think we'll run with the capsule. Yeah, let's take a peek at the color schemes. So, even though there is a color scheme already applied, you can see right here, you can actually thumb through the different color schemes that are pre-graded. There's a lot of them. This is pretty long here. Right? You can even create new if you have your own color schema for your character, your business, whatever you want to do. If you plan on making multiple things inside of Publisher with your character's colors, well, right there, you can click Create New and add whatever colors you want. In this case, we're just going to pick on one of the default ones here. I'm going to end up changing the colors anyway. Yeah, let's see what Mountain looks like. Maybe. Now you're going to notice something. I'm clicking here, but it is updating all of the templates that we have on the screen. And that's so if you actually don't like the one you've selected, you can click on a different one. See what that looks like. Now granted, it shows them all in preview naturally, but it doesn't switch the color scheme back. So you can actually click through these, find one that you like, and then off to the races you go. So, I'm going to use this one. Business cards are either portrait or landscape. Obviously, if you're working with any kind of paper, it doesn't really matter. It's just how you plan on laying out your card. I'm going to just stick with landscape because that's what I'm playing with here this evening. Or at least that's the thought that I'm playing with this evening, is a landscape layout. Alright. We'll click Great. Okay. So, first impressions with what we're looking at right now. We can see that I'm looking at something that takes up the whole screen. Don't let your eyes fool you. We're just zoomed in a whole bunch so that you can see the details and be able to kind of work on the card. It doesn't clearly have to be super small, but the card itself is still going to come out really small, right? So if I go to quickly take a peek at the printer options, you're going to see over here that it's going to make a bunch of individual cards, and that's perfectly fine. But in our preview over here, you can totally see that the card's super big, right? If we take a look at our lower right-hand corner, let me show you something. We are currently zoomed in at 413%. So, yes, it's a little big, but that's by design, so it's a little easier to work on. You can adjust this zoom level by just clicking the plus and minus symbol, or just grabbing this and dragging left and right, and it'll get you the distance, so it's a little easier to see. You know, match your preference. Okay, a couple things here. First things first, I'm not a business, so I'm not going to put that up there. I'm going to put the name of myself. I am TechHead41. I want to be centered. I want to be centered. Maybe. Let's see what it looks like. Boop. Well, if I center it, I think we're going to want to bump up the size of the font a little bit here. Maybe a little too much. Alright. That's not anything too unreasonable. Should be okay. Okay. So, we've got that. And I want to start putting in here some information. So I'm going to make this go away. I'm going to select the outline because I don't want to use it and hit delete on my keyboard to make it go away. I can do the same thing with the right-click context menu and also go to delete. Now granted, inside of Publisher, the phrasing in language is slightly different in these menus than you would expect in, say, Word or Excel. And the space of Publisher, things that you put onto a canvas, in this case the business card, is called an object. We'll hit delete object. And away it goes. Now this, even though, as you can see, if I don't click on the boxes, this information is top, bottom, but they're individual boxes, right? So if I delete just one, only half of this is going to disappear, which is fine. I actually only need one of them, so I'm going to just nuke the top one. Oh, nope, gotta select the box first, and delete. Ah. Whoop, whoop. If you accidentally drag something like I just did, I'm going to do that again. Okay, Control Z on the keyboard to go backwards. That is your global undo in all of Microsoft's products. Control Z. Control Z is very much your friend. Another option is also Control Y. If you want to redo something, then hit Control Y, and I can re-break myself on demand. Isn't that kind of neat? Yeah, no, let's leave it where it is. Looks better over there. All right, so with this selected, I'm going to bring it up a little bit more towards the middle here. Now, as I drag this around, I don't know how well this will be seen on stream. There's these little lines that are appearing as I move it around. Kind of hard to see. What they are, as I approach the end of something or near something, you see that blue line that's appearing on the right-hand side of the card? That means that's the end of what's going to be the printed space. If I go beyond that, which it will let me, that will get cut off. It won't be visible. It'll get chopped when you're going to print it. So you want to be careful with where you position your stuff. Right, so I'm going to bring this about here and let go. Now, something you will notice here, actually, right? I mentioned that this is the end of the card, this dotted line. I'm going to change my zoom level here and move out of a level. Look at this. What do we got going on here? This capsule runs off the edge of the page. Well, that's okay, but that just simply means this area of the capsule is not going to be in the printed area, which means we don't want to put stuff over here because no one's going to see it. It's going to get poofed when you go to print. So we don't have to do anything about that. That's just the way that the default template's laid out. That's perfectly fine, but you just want to be aware that that's very much a thing with the way this is currently laid out. Yeah, go back up a level. Bring this back into frame here. Now, you can also see that same thing's going on up here in the left, right? Now, I actually want that whole thing to be on there, so I'm actually just going to drag that and put it back. So that it's actually completely visible. Because I like the way the bubble looks, right? Now, I can clearly see the element that makes up me here is embedded inside of that. Now that's, interestingly enough, center positioned inside of that. I kind of don't like the way that's laid out, right? I kind of want it to be more centered with this colored line. Now, as you can see, I'm already centered though, but it's not in center. And if I uncenter it and go back to left align, it positions it over here. I'm not really a big fan of that. I would much rather it be more centered to the purple here. But me doing centered doesn't really give me that. Pushes me more off to the right. Well, that's okay, because this is just the text area that's a part of this bubble that was pre-built in here. All that means is we're just simply not going to use it. I'm going to just clear this text out, and I'm going to add a new field, which will allow me to put the text where I want it. So I'm going to come up to under the Home ribbon, click on Draw Text Box, and it's going to change my cursor to this little cross symbol, crosshairs. I'm just going to draw a box, let go, and type my name. And then I can hit Control E to center it. And now I've got my name centered, at least to this color for the most part, right? If I drag this, I can actually drag this around, and when it finds center, see that purple line that's right now cutting through the 4 in my username? That's technically the center of the card. If I let go, well, that's why when I centered the text, that it was putting me over here. Because there's snap lines that appear as you move elements around on your canvas. Now, like I said, I kind of want, Control Z. I want to put this text more centered. Oh, for the love of Pete. Come on, this one. There we go. I want this more centered approximately with color. Alright, something about there is not too bad. I'm going to increase the size of the box. I'm going to bump up by highlighting and clicking increase on the text size to make it bigger. Now, clearly, that's incredibly difficult to read. So we got to do something about the color. Not a big fan of that color. So we're going to highlight it. There's a couple different places you can click when you're working inside of the Microsoft Office suite to change colors. There is the flyout box. It appears right here, giving you general options to change text and other things. Or, that same menu that appears down here, that has now disappeared, is up here as well. So you don't have to run back to the top of the screen to change that color setting. You can just do it from the flyout box that appears down here. So I'll just re-highlight it. I'll click on the color. And we'll make it white so we can read it. That's much nicer. Okay. So now we've got a username. And I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of that font. What else do we have here we can play with? Alright, I kind of like that one a little more. Alright, a little bit more robustness. I like that. Alright. I've chosen a font. I've chosen a color. Now, I want to change the color of these two pre-made elements that are on the screen. The bowl and this backdroppy color. I'm going to do that. I can click on it. And very similar like in Excel, Publisher also has context-based menus that only appear when you have an element selected. In Excel, I've talked about it several times, that tables, the formatting for them only appears when you're clicked in the table. Same thing happens with elements inside of Publisher. I'm clicked on this particular element, so the text box tools and drawing tools appear at the top of the screen. And Publisher does the same thing Excel does. It adds these colors on these tabs to let you know they're only there until you click off of what you have selected. So if I click off, they disappear. If I click back on, they reappear. And so far as it goes. So, I'm going to click on Format. These are both Format. I can edit my shape, but I kind of want to change its fill, which is this one right here. So, I can choose from one of these pre-selected colors by highlighting over them and seeing what they look like. But say you have a particular color you want to use, right? Say that you want to use the colors of your character, right? So I'm going to do that in this example. With the box down below, you can add gradients. This is a cool thing. I mean, you can play with all this stuff and make it look however you want, right? It's pretty neat. But with this, I actually want to change our fill to a particular color. So I'm going to go to Fill More Colors. And then I'm going to go to Custom. And from the Custom screen, you could drag through, right, and cycle through the colors that are here. Now you're only going to see that in the tinier preview window down here, right? So if let me bring this in a little closer here. So I could cycle through these colors, right? And you can see the respective red, green, blue, or RGB color changes as well, right? But you're only going to see that reflected in this little box down here. Well, I want a particular color. So my color is red 73, green 78, and a blue of 93. I'll click OK. And just like that, I now have my color I wanted for the bubble at the top of my card. I'm going to do the same thing with this element off here to the right. And do it a different way though. I'm going to right click on it. Instead of going to the ribbon on the top, which I absolutely could have done the same exact thing, I'm going to show you this a different way. Right click, go to Format Object. That actually pulls up a menu. We can go right here and choose the color. Right? Let me make sure I click that on the right element here. There we go. I had this bubble selected, not the color. When you edit anything that has color, it always puts the color of what you're editing on the screen, so I instantly knew I didn't select the right thing. It happens. There's a lot of stuff on here, right? So we're going to go to Color, Fill Effect, and I'm going to go to Color. And with the months, it's the same wording, more colors. And it brings up the same menu, right? And let's see here. We're going to do red of 171, and a green of 2, and a blue of 250. Alright. Boom. Boom. Alright. Nice. Okay. Well, we've got that. I don't need this. I am not an organization. I'm a floof on the internet. We're gonna highlight that. Delete it. And then over here, I'm gonna reuse this box. And what I'm gonna do in here is we're gonna put some social information. We are right now Twitch TV /TechHead41. Add an extra space. Oh, no. Let's try that again. No. No. Interesting. I don't know why it's doing it. Why is it doing it? There we go. Goofy thing. Alright, so if you didn't know, I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on YouTube as well. I just upload previous classes that I do here to there. So if you want to rewatch them, or if you want to leave a comment, you could totally do that. Obviously, once the stream's over, I won't see it if it's here, because I won't be here, and you'll be here, and I won't be here. That doesn't do anybody any good if you want to tell me something. Besides the facts. But so we got that, right? And I'm going to just scoot that down a little bit. Bump up the fruit on this. And you go boop, boop. Okay. It did something. Publisher didn't like it. What did I do, maybe you ask? You see the red? It's on this box element. Red indicates that there's something inside of the element not currently visible on the screen, because I increased the size of the font so big that it no longer fits on the screen. inside of the way the element's designed. So to fix this, I'll just drag it and pull down. That makes it reappear. Most of the red disappears. Now if I go back up with this, it's going to turn red again. It doesn't like that because I'm not showing everything I have typed on the screen. So we now have that, but maybe we want, say, the actual symbols of the platform on our card, right? So you could go to the insert and choose picture, and then pick a picture from your computer and then plop it in here, right? Or if you have the picture already open on your computer in your file explorer, you can just right-click copy, right-click paste, and bring it right over, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on my Twitch icon. I can hit Control-C on my keyboard. I'm going to come over here, and then I'm going to hit Control-V. Maybe. Copy. Pasta. There we go. Alright, so now, here's something that's kind of fun. More lines. More invisible lines. There's so many invisible lines that are in Publisher that you don't see in any of the other Microsoft products. It's wild. If I go on top of the text, it's going to jack me up something fierce, right? Well, let me get that out of the way there. And I'm just going to scoot it up right there. See that line? I'll let go. That's as close as I can get that to this text without it pushing it, because it's the edge of the box, right? Now, I also want to do the same thing for Twitter, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to bring that over. And we're going to scoot it down here. Now, you'll see that I got a line that appears on the right, a line that appears on the left. The line on the left means that it's now perpendicular to the image above it. Now let go. It's not close enough to the box here to cause any issues. And now I've got my socials right next to my text, right? So if I wanted to, instead of putting the word twitch.tv, I could just simply put techhead41 and the Twitch symbol, to which anybody who's looking at the social card should know that you're talking about Twitch. But if they don't know what the symbol means, then it does help to have the whole thing out, right? Push comes to shove, however you want to lay out, you can be super creative with the way you do this, right? You could put QR codes on here, which are the little boopy things that you see that are on a lot of social cards, and where are some of those? I've actually seen it on a fair amount of business cards where people put their QR codes. And the cool thing when you're making a QR code is that you can choose what kind it is. In the case of something like this that's being social, it would just be text. So it would just type what we're looking at on the screen here. But you can actually make QR codes that involve your business address, phone number, your name, your contact information, all in that little QR code. I would definitely encourage you to check out making QR codes. Do a little bit of Googling. Google's your friend on something like this, because there's lots of cool stuff you could do with it. And once you have it cooked up, once you have the image, you can just put it right onto your business card, or in this case, our social card. And then anybody with their camera can scan it, and then your info, whoop, right into their phone. Super helpful. The next example, we're just doing what we're doing. But, okay. So, now that I have this, I have one more thing I want to add to this, and that is going to be my picture. So, from the lovely Twitch streamer KDono, I asked her if it was okay if this picture she made during her stream was okay for me to put on my social cards. And she told me yes, it was okay. So we're going to use that. I'm also going to put her credit also on the card. Because, push comes to shove, when it comes to artsy stuff, artsy people, give them credit for their stuff. I did not make this. I'm not going to claim that I made this. But I asked permission to use it. And I'm also going to put credit underneath it. Because I like what she does. And if I handed out my social card, I'd want them to know she made this. Because that's super cool. Sharing's caring, folks. And we're going to make sure we do that. So we're going to scoot on down here. We're going to draw another box. And down here, we are going to do some art credit. Okay, I'm going to check to make sure I typed that all right after I got it on the screen. So, expand this box. Now, something you will notice is there's these 3 little dots that do appear on the screen. That is another indicator that there's text. It's not completely visible on the screen currently. And I think actually if you click it... oh, look at that. That's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that before. That little character bucket. Huh. I gotta admit, I don't use this program all that often myself, but it's helpful for making stuff. Oh, the overflow. That's where it ran off to. Yeah. Where do you want the text to dump to? That's actually pretty neat. Yeah, I kind of figured. That's okay. Alright, that's okay. Control Z that. I just have to resize this text to make it smaller. This one up here, and we're going to bump this down. And I'm going to choose a more fun font. Let's see what cool font we can apply to KW. Yeah, I like that one. Okay. So something that I want to show you is layering. So as it stands right now, this picture, if I drag it, is currently behind this text box. Right? Now you can't see that it's behind the text box, but if I drag this picture down, you can continue to see the text. Well, if I had managed to make the text box first, right? Or if I actually just bring the picture back in, meaning that this box is first, and I grab the picture a second time, uh-oh, I can't see that text anymore. Because as you bring things into Publisher, it layers the stuff in the order that you bring it into the program. I don't want this text to fall behind the picture. I want it to stay visible. Well, as you're working in here, under the, where's that live? Under the drawing tools, there is the arrangement section. This allows you to snap stuff to a particular alignment, or in our case, bringing things to the foreground or sending it to the background. I currently have that text box selected. I want to show up on top of the picture, so I'm going to bring it forward by clicking the button. And now, I can put this image wherever I want, and it's going to flow behind the text box, and we can continue to read it. Looks pretty good. Alright. I like it. Excuse me while I get a little water. Okay. So now, if I pull up our print preview again, we can see in our preview that we've got a total of 10 cards per piece of paper. As far as the printer is concerned, it is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So that's a standard piece of letter paper, right? Or just people call it copy paper. The cardstock I have is also 8.5 by 11. I have 2 different types of cardstock. I've got solid cardstock with no perforation, and I've also got cardstock with perforation. So I'm going to show you the stuff that would be the non-perforated stuff. I'm not going to say that one is much better over the other, because I kind of find issue with both of them, and it's just simply, I'm going to show you what happens, and then you can make the informed decision to choose if you want to make this stuff yourself, in which way you would prefer to do it, right? So, as it stands right now, I've got manila colored cardstock, which I think I forgot to get out. Find that. And I'm actually going to put up the I'm sure that's no, it's like here for me. All right, hold on a moment. Okay, so this is a piece of cardstock paper, right? And if I compare it to a normal piece of printed paper, there's weight to this, right? Because I can hold it, and it doesn't instantly flop over when I hold it, as opposed to a normal piece of printed paper, right? So your cardstock comes in different weights, and the thicker the weight, the less bendy resistance you'll have. The nice thing about cardstock is that you can get this in a variety of different colors. I actually have a couple different colors here in my drawer. There. So, these are different colored cardstocks, right? So if you wanted the base of your cards to be something different, as long as it's printable media, you could just use it, right? So we've got the gray, we've got this off-color red. You can work with all this different stuff. Now, if you want a colored base, you're almost not going to find the pre-perforated paper that's colored like this. So you do have some color options if you so choose, and you don't want something that's like an eggshell or an off-white, which is what this is, right? Okay. So I have a printed example. I cooked up a little earlier before we get started here. Okay, so by default, with the print preview we see on the screen, right, it's going to space the cards with a little bit of space in between each, and then a strip straight down the center that allows you to cut the cards apart based on just normal paper. This is not perforated, this is just normal printer paper, right? So this we can cut as we see fit. Right? This other one that I have, this is also just normal printer paper. You can see the spacing is different. Now the reason the spacing is different on this one is because I used this to match the Avery template of the pre-made stuff that I bought. Right? This stuff has perforation lines in it, but as you can see, the layout of the individual cards that are on this are right up against each other. So if I left this with this big strip in the center, this isn't going to line up with the template. So if you plan on using a template, you can't simply just design your card and then not tell publisher you're using something special. You need to tell it that you have a special layout with your stuff. Otherwise you're going to have a problem. Now, this particular example that I made earlier, I accidentally forgot to push the guides alongside of my printer up against the sides of the paper. And if I bring this kind of close, you'll see the perforation lines and where the business cards start and end don't line up. So this pre-perforation line runs halfway through the top of that one. This one half chops off part of the text here, right? So if you're planning on using the pre-perforated stuff, almost every printer will have some kind of documentation to tell you what to do with cardstock. Almost all of them will tell you that when you're going to use it on the manual feed tray if your printer has one. A manual feed tray just simply means that you load one page at a time, and then you have to get the orientation correct, right? So this Avery stock actually has a front and a back, and it actually tells you on the back that it's the back. Fancy that. Kind of helpful. Well, you also have to load this stuff the correct way into your printer. I'm working with a Brother printer, Brother color printer, And in my printer, there's a tray that opens in the front and a tray that opens in the back. So then the way that it prints is this cardstock comes right through the front of the printer, straight out the back. Which means that this being the front, like you're supposed to, I actually feed this straight in to the printer. Now, home inkjet printers, which are more common, the paper usually loads in on the bottom, and then it curls up, and then comes through and prints out like this, right? So you're going to have to experiment a little bit with the way your printer's set up, because in the case of an inkjet printer that has the paper that loads in from the bottom, the way you're going to end up having to load the Avery paper would actually be upside down, face down with the front towards the front. So then when it comes up, it'll curl up and then print from top to bottom. Like I said, every printer is different, and that's something that it's helpful to have just some normal printer paper, because when you buy cardstock, the stuff is more expensive per sheet. So it's good to waste a couple pieces of normal paper before you waste the more expensive stuff. Hopefully, you don't have to do too many trials and error, and you don't have to waste paper, and put more stuff in the hole, and, save the environment, a knock or two. So with this, I'm going to use normal cardstock, right? So I'm going to use this piece of paper, and I send that to my printer. Set these aside. Okay. As it is right now, I went to my printer and I opened up the manual feed on the front, and I had the piece of paper sticking in the back, or excuse me, in the front. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Print, I'm going to leave the default settings, click Print, and I'm going to go catch that. Okay, so fresh off the printer, we have our lovely piece of paper, and it is not pre-perforated, it is cardstock. It's got a little bit of spring to it, right? So now we have to cut this, right? Everybody has their own preferences with the way their stuff looks, and having cards that you make look at least somewhat uniform is something that I would imagine you'd want to aspire to attempt to accomplish. So this part's a little difficult. So with no guiding lines, you could use a pair of scissors. You could grab a ruler and, say, a cutting board and an X-Acto knife to etch out the individual cards. Or you can use something like a paper slicer, which is what I'm going to end up using, right? Because with the paper slicer, this allows you to cut nice straight edge with the really sharp blades, got to be careful around those, and have this 90-degree top to push this up against. So we now have our cards. I'm going to unlock the blade, so now I can activate that, and we look mighty fine. So I like to cut length first and then cut out individual cards. So this is not an exact science. I do not claim it to be one. But what I'm going to line up here is the edge of the blade's box, or the end of the blade right here, up against this area, right? And I'm going to eyeball where that comes through, because it's going to slice right along that really super sharp edge. So I'm going to push it up against there, and we're going to attempt to do something straight. Just like that, they're separated. So now
We're going to keep on going. Okay. So first impressions, I can already tell that the one on the end I haven't trimmed has a little bit more paper on the top of it. I'm sorry, the bottom of this has a little bit more paper on it than the other cards, right? So if I stack them, you can see right there that that line is a little bit longer on this one. So I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to see, approximately speaking, about how much I need to trim. Yes, it's about approximately that much. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now, I still have to cut the individual cards and this excess on the ends off, and that's okay. Now I can see that if I take a look here, that when I line them up, they're all about approximately the same in placement. If you wanted to do these one at a time, you absolutely could. I think it's close enough that I can trim them as one stack, which is what I'm going to do haphazardly. I'm going to bring this in. And then nice. And we're going to do the other side. So I can thumb through them and see that they're about where they all belong. Okay, now, I won't separate them the same way. This is going to be a little bit more of a manual process, if you will. But we take this on one at a time. Okay. I can already tell I did a fairly subpar job. It's not terribly great. This one actually looks like it's a little too long. It's not perfect, but I didn't cut off any of the important information. But I'm not done yet. So, granted, I know I'm moving a little quick, but there's something that I normally don't do, and that's cut corners. This is an exception, because this is a corner cutting machine. Because they're not exactly uniform, we can cut the corners off. And when you hold a stack of rounded cards, I've noticed that when they're a little different in size, it's not nearly as noticeable. Now, naturally, you can continue to trim and go on about your time. I know this is probably incredibly loud. I am not going to do all of them to save your ears. But when you have a couple of cards here that are rounded, you can't nearly tell as much. These aren't exactly the same size. Doesn't look that bad, right? Let me bring that up to the camera real close so you can get a good look at this. I have these on top of each other, right? And if I do a little bit of a reveal here, right, you can see the username. And then slide it back over. That's actually fairly even. Doesn't look that bad. Now with the fact that I kept it with the bubbles, right? There's a reason I kept the bubbles. It's because I planned on chopping the edges off, right? Now, what's the benefit of using pre-perforated cardstock? Well, all the cards are uniform. Here's the catch. When you're working with pre-perforated paper, it needs to go through the printer straight. Because if it doesn't go through the printer straight, you're going to have some exceptionally jacked up business cards. Or social cards in our example, right? So this particular one I did earlier, I didn't separate it because I want to wait until now to show you, right? So if I split these based on their perforation, right? You're going to quickly see there's a problem with the way these were made. Because I didn't have the guides tight up against the cards, excuse me, up against the paper when I was printing this, it messed this up really, really bad. Like, exceptionally bad. The nice thing about the perforated paper, when you use it correctly, is that these pre-perforated lines aren't too noticeable. You just have to be easy on the paper when you're folding it back and forth. It leaves perfectly uniform cards. But, as we can compare against our rounded ones, our square ones we made, they're not exactly perfect, right? But if I get a hold of them and show you side by side, they're a little uneven, right? Which may or may not, that may not bug some people. To me, it kind of bugs me, right? Which is why I like to do the round corner thing, which makes it less noticeable. I don't care as much. But with how super uniform the pre-perforated ones are, it's a nightmare. It doesn't feed through the printer correctly, right? So you end up getting garbage on demand. Isn't that exciting? Alright. So now that we know what we need to do as a goal, when we feed this piece of paper, as you can see, like I said, perfectly uniform. Super straight. Looks like a mess. I'm going to be a little bit more careful when I feed this through the printer. But we need to get it to that point, right? So I already know, before I grab a blank of the Avery stuff, right, that I need to set the paper to print on one of those pieces of stock. Now, this example I printed earlier is exactly the layout that Avery paper expects. It expects the cards to be right on top of each other with all this white border off to the side, which, as I broke that apart, it was the same setup. Which means the defaults won't work. Right, this is the default. I didn't change anything. I opened Publisher. This is how it wanted to make it without me changing anything at all. It's way too wide, and there's not enough border on the bottom or top. The sides look kind of okay, but the rest of it not so much. Right? Let's fix it. So, when you buy any kind of cardstock, you will see there's generally a number printed on here. Now, this isn't completely random. This is the actual, I'm going to call it the part number that this paper is. 28371. What this is going to be a piece of useful information we need to tell a publisher so that we can print our cardstock. So let's go do it.
Alrighty. Well, we're back over here. I am going to go into the settings. But before I do that, let me just show you. We go back to our print preview. This is how it is right now, right? That big gap in the center, which we know won't work with the pre-perforated paper. So, we have to tell... I just realized I had the wrong slash in here. We're going to fix that. Bloop. Okay, much better. Nope, I wouldn't have been using those. That would have drove me more nuts than anything. All right. Paper. We have the talk paper, right? So this is something that actually took me a bit to find. I was playing with this, and it's not in a super obvious place. We have to go to page design, and then we have to go to the sizes, the size of our paper. This is where you can actually see those 3 built-in sizes again, like we did at the beginning of the example. If you choose the one you don't like, or if you want to switch between them, you can actually just quickly change it here, and it updates your template. But right now we need to take a look at more preset page sizes, which is the bottom option. And what this gives you is all the different types of built-in existing paper, right? These are all the different manufacturers, right? And I specifically have Avery paper. So under manufacturers, I'm going to go to Avery US letter because it's a letter size piece of paper. Now, remember that number I told you about that was on the packaging? That's where this comes into play. All these numbers here are the different cardstock numbers, or part numbers as I kind of like to call them, of the paper. So I got to scoot on down here because mine starts with 2.8. Did I go too far? 2.8, I did go too far. 28371. 28371. Okay, so when I click on it, you can see this layout is going to look just like the piece of paper I have as a blank. I'll click OK. Now when I go over to my print preview, the positioning changed. Now I've got the same layout and format as one of these blank pieces of paper. Or excuse me, one of these blank pieces of cardstock. The pre-perforated cardstock. Come on. Out of your envelope. Okay. So, you can see tightly lined cards. And when I go back over to the bench. You can see with nothing printed on them, the tightly laid out cards. This is the one that failed to print earlier, right? But you can see the pre-perforation lines, a nice solid down the middle, and then the area where you don't use. Now, the nice thing is if you accidentally misplace the big envelope that this stuff comes in, Avery thought about us, because not only is it on the envelope in plain sight where you can see it, it's on the template. They make sure you can't lose it, because if you lost it, you wouldn't know which one you were working with, and that'd be kind of sad. Come on. Pretty good. Okay, nothing up my sleeve. I'm gonna go try to attempt to print this straight now with the guides. So, I finally got it to feed through the machine, and I was not able to use the manual feed because it keeps telling me it's jamming. In an effort to continue moving along here, I used the paper tray. Well, as you can probably imagine what had happened when I did that, it didn't feed straight. It didn't feed all that straight. But we're going to take a look and see how not straight this really is. Because I don't think it's as bad as when it fed through the wrong way. But I still think it's going to be enough to not look good.
You know why? That's the back of the page. It fed backwards through the printer. Well, yeah, that sounds about right. Remember how I mentioned that you don't want to waste paper? Because if you load the paper wrong, it prints on the back side, like I did, like a goob. Yeah, see, don't do what I did. This is an excellent example of what not to do. So I was trying to use the manual feed, because I know how the manual feed's laid out, but since this printed on the back, that means I was supposed to load this stock in upside down into the tray, but I had no plans on using the tray. But the printer had other plans for me, which, I'm not gonna lie, is kind of irritating. Now, part of the reason why there's a front and back is because of the finish. There's a different finish on what's considered the front as opposed to the back on this particular paper. It doesn't really feel any different, but it's the way that they coat that side of the page, which is why you'll notice that the colors don't look as jump out compared to when it printed correctly. I don't really think that's going to come across on the camera, or at least not with my camera. But all of my bubbles got jacked up because I put the paper in wrong. But as you can clearly see, if you plan on doing this yourself, you might waste about an hour and a half worth of time. I think I probably wasted approximately about that long. Let's see. A little short of that, but yeah, from start to finish, it's choose your own adventure, right? And this option with the pre-perforated paper, I don't know how I really feel about it. I'm sure that if I could get the manual feed to work on my printer correctly, like I meant to show you, but it doesn't want to listen, this probably isn't a bad option. And if you're looking to make something that's incredibly uniform, where you don't have to worry about trimming or cutting or slicing with this, something like this or scissors, this is not a bad solution. But you have to keep in mind that if you don't get that nice even flow through the printer and it doesn't line up with the perforations, well, you're going to have a mess. At least when you have something that you get to choose how you cut, it may be slightly a little bit off, but in the end, you can have something that doesn't look that bad, So, when everything's all said and done, y'all can end up at your social gathering, and you can bring out your business cards, or your social cards, in your briefcase, and surprise the masses. These things are fantastic. Little tiny briefcase. This does actually have functioning latches on it, or at least a functioning latch because it's a little busted. But yeah, gotta love that. You want to talk about presentation? Tiny business. It's the business of fun. Yes, I am ridiculous. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Okay. Well, with that, that's some of the chaos of making your own social cards. I know I had a good time with that. It's super goofy. I open up the floor to questions. And do a little bit of headband. Alright, well, we're looking about done now. So, well, thank you all for coming. Your time and attention is appreciated. Okay, and with that, I wish you all an excellent evening. Stay safe, stay creative, and good night.